My name is Justin Cottle, and this is the Dissection Room. Creating content and remaining authentic to yourself is probably the most universal problem that content creators have, regardless of the platform they create for. It's actually easy to make content with the intention of going viral if you're not very concerned with being and remaining authentic to yourself, because virality is really just based on following a procedure. They're called best practices. You follow best practices, all of them, which is, by the way, difficult to do. I'm not trying to make it seem as though that's easy, because that requires good camera, good audio, being great at storytelling, naturally good at public speaking. There's a lot of things that go into it, not just metadata and everything else. But if you are able to do that, you're going to go viral. And that doesn't require authenticity. In fact, in many cases, authenticity may be bad, because if you're just being authentic, who knows what's going to happen when you start interjecting opinions or things that may or may not be typically seen on camera. Right? We've all kind of gotten used to how people present themselves when we see them on YouTube or the news or whatever it is, right? There's almost like this expectation for how someone should be. Even if we're not thinking about that specifically, it's almost like the subconscious thing. It's just like we understand, oh, this person knows how to be in front of a camera. And I can say this from experience. It's easy to fall into this trap by doing that. It's not that that is inherently bad, and there's always some aspect to it. This performative aspect. But if that becomes you in front of the camera, it's like there's this bifurcation of your personality. And what then happens over time is you can lose yourself. Because say if you become successful on social media, and again, success can mean different things for different people. But if you become successful to the point where people start recognizing you, say out in public, you can start wondering, who am I at this point? Because it's almost like you're this one person, and then all of a sudden they recognize you. Do you switch over to your other persona? And no one wants to do that. And that's a toxic thing to do for yourself, for your mental health. But it's so common. And the problem is, it's a trap that pretty much every content creator falls into. Because pushing record on the camera, it's a very alien thing to then continue being the exact way you were before, because there's like this process, there's this ritual to it. For me, it's like I have to reach across and physically press this button, and it makes a sound, it goes beep, and I now know it's game time. That doesn't mean that I literally just become this completely different person. But there's definitely a performative aspect to it. And over my career of creating content, it has been my goal to reduce that as much as possible, because I'm very aware of it, and everyone I've ever talked to is aware of it when they create content. It's getting easier for younger generations because they grow up with cameras around them all the time. It's easier for them to be authentic. But even still, I guarantee that even if you're Gen Z, Gen Alpha, there is going to be some element of inauthenticity to it in some aspect. Maybe it's dramatically less, but it's still going to be there. I'm not trying to say that that needs to go away in its entirety, because you may not be able to do that. But doing everything you can to reduce that is of the utmost importance with content creation, because that's what sets you up for long-term success, for longevity in this, right? At this moment, there is a mass exodus of popular YouTubers. Now, I'm not going to claim that this is about authenticity or inauthenticity, because if you look at the ones who are leaving, they seem to be the most authentic people out there. My point is simply success in social media does not necessarily mean you're just going to continue doing that. And if you're inauthentic in that success, it makes it even more difficult to do. For me, it's not that the content I've been producing for the Institute of Human Anatomy is inauthentic. That's not what I'm claiming at all. But at times, certain pieces of content were less authentic than I really felt comfortable with. And the only person to blame is me. And it's one of those things I didn't even realize was happening until I was either filming it or it was afterwards in post-production. And I'm just like, man, that doesn't feel like me. And it gets even worse if the video does well. Because then all of a sudden it's like it's like a character has shown up. And it's hard to identify with that character. Now, when I first started creating content, that was much more of the case. That there was this character almost. But I recognized that very early on, and I started just saying, I gotta fix that, because this isn't me. Or at least it's not the me that I want to put on camera. And it's been a challenge to do that, to learn how to do that. When I make a piece of content, at least for the Institute of Human Anatomy, I'm aware that that's at bare minimum going to be seen by hundreds of thousands of people. It could be millions. To be able to turn that off has been very difficult, but I have been able to do it for the most part. And the trick is actually pretty simple. Not that there's only one component to this, but I think this is the one that's been the most valuable to me, and it's not a secret. This is something so many have talked about before me, and they will continue talking about after I say this. And that is speaking to the camera as though it's just one person. Like right now, I pretend this camera here is just one individual person. I'm not talking to a lot of people. I'm not talking to 5 people. I'm definitely not talking to 10, 20, 1,000, a million. I'm talking to one person right now. And that's you. You are someone that I'm assuming is watching this or listening to this because you are interested in being more authentic on camera. Maybe that's not the case, but that's what I'm assuming. And that's the only way I can have an effective conversation with this camera right now. That's the only way I can actually be honest. Because as soon as I start to think, maybe this is going to be seen by a lot of people, maybe this is going to be seen by my family member. If I start thinking along those lines, it's easier to lose myself. But I can tell you that that's what people want. We're tired of the BS. We're tired of that inauthenticity that is just everywhere and has been everywhere, not just in social media, but on TV. We've seen it with celebrities. We've seen it everywhere. People are just tired of it. And if you want to connect with your audience and create a community, which in my opinion is the only real goal that anyone should ever have with social media, because again, virality is easy to do. If you're just repeating the process over and over and over, just making viral video after viral video after viral video, all while remaining inauthentic, I can promise you the community that's going to be growing inside of your ecosystem of content is not a community that you want. That's not to say that the individuals are bad. It's just that it's not going to be helpful to you in the long term. It's not going to be conducive to more authentic content in the future. It's going to be harder to convert if you start having some kind of product, because it's just, who are these people? Why are they there? They were there for this person that's not actually you. Or maybe it's just a shade of you. I can promise you, a community that is built from authenticity is the way you have longevity in a career of social media. In fact, it's the only way you have longevity. No one wants to go work for people that you don't really care about. And the people don't want to watch videos for someone they know doesn't care about them. Now, certain content, yes, it's based around being viral. Like for me personally, for whatever reason, I enjoy watching dash cam footage of car accidents and near misses and things of that nature. It surprises me. I did not anticipate that. I did not know this about myself until I saw it. That type of content, the community that evolves from that is not really engaging with a person. They're engaging with this type of content, right? There's always going to be exceptions to these rules. But if you're doing a talking head type video or any type of video that shows your face, that you're telling a story, that type of content needs to be authentic. It needs to be you. I've been thinking a lot about something I heard from the author Neil Gaiman lately, where he talked about, as an author, he was talking about specifically as a fiction author, but I think it's applicable in all domains of creativity, is that you need to be willing to share probably a little more of yourself than you should. And it really comes down to vulnerability. You need to be able to lay things out there. And when you do that, it's very revealing. I mean, that's the whole point of it. And it's easy to wonder if people are going to accept it, but you need to do that. Because if you don't, this is not something you're going to be able to do long term. No matter how successful you become, you're going to reach this point where you're going to be like, this isn't worth it. Authenticity above all. Above all. That's why it's the most difficult thing you can do. At least it's the most difficult thing that I've run into as a content creator. And I've been doing this now for over 4 years. The ecosystem that the Institute of Human Anatomy we have between Jonathan and myself, I mean, we have to be well over 500 to 700 million views in total, encroaching upon 1 billion. Maybe it's there. That's crazy to think about. I've spent a lot of time over these past 4 years thinking about myself, who I am, how I remain true to myself during all this. Because trust me, if I wanted to just continue making just viral video after viral video, I know how to do it. It's not that hard. It's really not. It's about developing that hook. You say that thing that's a little salacious, a little controversial, piques curiosity, or it upsets people. Like these things are not hard. This is stuff that marketing has been a part of marketing for decades. People know this. This is not a difficult thing to do. But if that's not you, I promise it's not something you want to do. I'm always just telling myself authenticity above all. And I can tell you that if you start taking that approach, it will be more of a grind as you're creating content. There's no question in my mind. It's gonna elongate the process to whatever your idea of success is to be. Maybe maybe you strike the lottery, maybe things work out for you better, but I mean, I think more often than not, statistically, it's going to be a grind. But the community you're going to get will be worth it. And the satisfaction you get with the content you create will again be worth it. Creative people need to be vulnerable. And the only way, because that is where creativity comes from, or at least a good amount of creativity comes from vulnerability. You have to be willing to be a little more open with yourself than you should be. And when that happens, it'll take a little bit longer, but it'll be worth it. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next episode.